Hello teachers! Welcome once again to my vlog. This is Teacher Nika, and if you are new to my channel, please do not forget to click the subscribe button and the bell button to get notified of my previous and future videos. So if you are one of my subscribers already, it is nice to have you back once again to my channel. Let's talk about what is written down the description box. You are in here in this video because you want to know how you're going to make your classes interactive and interesting to your learners or to your students, specifically face-to-face classes. So recently I had my practice teaching in Laureta National High School. So I've been a teacher in an actual face-to-face classroom, and I know that this transition is new, not only here in my country, but also in some other countries who just recently had a face-to-face classes. There's a lot of changes, specifically not just for the students, but also for the teachers. For those new teachers, it is new environment, new way to teach. Most of us were already used on having classes online, right? So we have no enough idea on how to make our classes interesting. Now I'm going to help you on how I made my classes interesting and also remarkable for my students. Let's begin. So without further ado, let's start with how I have my, let's say, warm up during my classes. So in Laureta, I am going to teach Filipino students. So, therefore, I need to talk sometimes in vernacular or in their mother tongue or in our mother tongue. But most of the time, and specifically during classes and demonstrations, we are required to talk in English. But there are chances or situations that the students could not understand what you're saying, and they are still shocked on the classes, on how they're going to conduct their classes. So warm up is very important and helpful for them to also prepare themselves on what the lesson would be and what they should expect. So here are some warm up tips that I've been doing during my classes. Let's have here first the simplest one, the very common one, which is this thing. So it's a skull. Some use ball or a pen, and some uses crayons. But as for me, I don't know, I'm quite unique, but I think of a skull. It is not symbolic, but I think that this is the only thing that would make the class funny a little bit, because when my students saw this skull, they think that what are you expecting us to do? What should we do with the skull? That's their question. So some makes fun of it and say that maybe the teacher would make them dance or act. And so actually, some students also think that it is like not a good thing for them to hold a skull, right? So they would think that it's a bad omen. But I use this skull in order for them to make fun and think of what possible thoughts that would come up in their mind. But that is totally not related to the activity that I'm going to make them do. I choose a skull just for me to be unique. But anything could be used. You can use a pen or a ball if you want to, but I prefer this one, any object. So I use this, and with the help of music, I would let my students pass the skull from one person to another. I also used this one. It is my DIY bias. So I use this to, let's say, make it also fun for the students. So they don't know if it's a skull, they don't know what it means, and if it's a dice, they don't know also what it means. So it makes them wonder. Now, when I use the skull, I usually use this to make an oral recitation, but it is not, let's say, it is not going to be difficult for the student. Why? Because that oral recitation is just for them to know what the lesson would be. For example, you're going to ask their own opinion about a specific picture. What do they see in this one and that one? Because of course, from face to face to on or from online classes to face, our students are afraid to express their ideas in front of other people because they are used on talking in front of a camera, in front of their mobile phone. So it's still new for them again to talk with other students or to talk in front. So making this one or using this one makes it for them lively and challenging. So I always make sure that when I use this, I will not pressure my student. That is the important thing to remember. You're going to use this or you're going to use this not to pressure your student, but to make them participate, to make them, let's say, do the task, but not pressure them. So you're going to ask them, for example, during my demonstration, I presented a picture of, let's say, a beach. Okay, so I presented a picture of a beach, or I think it's something that is related to needs and wants. So I posted a picture there in front of class and asked the student to describe what they see and what do they think the topic would be. So using this, random student would be the one to participate. So there would be no favoritism. Anyone could answer. And again, I'm playing the music without looking at the student. I asked a friend of mine, a co-teacher, to play the music. And that co-teacher is not looking at the students who is holding the skull or this dice. So that makes it random. So always remember to make a random choice to your students so that everyone could participate and avoid anxiety in classrooms. Now, another trick with this dice, you can also present a random questions in front. It's like snake and ladder if you're particular with that game, or yeah, snake and ladder, yes. And then you're going to let the students roll this dice, and that dice would be the one to decide what number would be their next step, how many steps they should move. So this one would be time consuming. So I didn't actually use it on my demonstration, but I have that thought in mind but didn't use it. So during demonstration, you're only allowed to have at least an hour of class or 30 minutes of classes. So make sure to make it interactive but not time consuming. Next, so we are done with that kind of warm up. Now, let's proceed with activities. So, after warm up, you already give the idea to the students on what they should expect on the lesson that you're going to talk about. So, here now comes or this time comes our activity. You're done with the discussion. You're going to test if the students really understand what you meant or what you want them to do. Now, here I have this. These are cardboards. So these are only DIYs. So this is how I write. I don't have a good handwriting, but at least it worked. So whenever I want my student or task them to have an activity, I usually do it by group. Why? Because if it's by group, I could see everyone participating. And I always make sure that if it's by group, it's not only one person to act. So there's still a trick. Like for example, this card, I would count. I would count a number, and this one would be passed to the next person until the number I said, and then that person will be the one to decide the answer. So not the group members, but they could still have teamwork. I will still give them time to decide whether their answer is really final or they would like to change any of their answers. So I use this presenting, for example, a picture that could, let's say, describe the things they want or the things they need. So I think it is not readable on the screen on this camera, but and let's say I am a student and I'm holding this, I could definitely read it. So at least I could see it. So I make the letters readable so that whenever the students is at the very back of the classroom, I could still see and judge whether they have answered it correctly. So after this one, after presenting or having a game like that, of course, the students need to do it fast, or they need to make a decision fast. I still give them time limit. So there's at least 10 to 15 seconds for them to decide whether to change it or not. So that's the trick, because the students need to think fast. Everyone should think fast, whether to decide that their member or the decision of their member is correct or not. So that makes the class interesting and fun. Next, after that, let's say another activity that you could also do is this one. Okay, these are boards. This is not my original, let's say, idea. Why? Because this idea was given to me by my, let's say, advisory teacher. Yeah, I handled, I have, like, let's say, different two different teachers that I have to let's say mingle with or cooperate with. I have the cooperating teacher and the advisor. The cooperating teacher is the person that I need to follow the schedule with. So I'm going to teach all of those students that's under her subject, but the advisor is like the woman, or let's say the man, or the person that I need to handle the advisory. So here in my country, we have the classroom, the early subject teacher, and the advisory. So those two teachers, I've learned a lot. Like, let's say, from the previous teacher, or let's say the cooperating teacher, I have learned from her about the stuff such as this thing. But the thing is that she uses paper and not this one. Yeah, I've learned this one from her. So that's her idea. But I want to unique. I don't want to use the paper because she usually runs a paper around and let the students write on that paper, and then afterwards do the same thing or write on the paper and then erase their answer. So for me, I use this one. So this idea was, let's say, thought or given to me by my advisory teacher. She actually advised me to borrow a board. So they have these English boards. There are four English boards that the teacher usually let the other teachers borrow use during the discussion or English subject. But as for me, I want to make it like, let's say, I want to use my own props. I want to use my own stuff during classes. That's my personality. Though I am very glad to know such idea from my advisory teacher. So this I do with this one. I think it is very common to everyone. You're going to let the student write their answer on this board, and the fastest person to raise the board, or the first person to raise the board would be the one to be checked first. But if the answer of the first person is wrong, the second person is right, then that second person will be the one to get the points. But let's say um, that one makes it one person. So one person will be the only person to write, right? So in that way, other members should participate and think, but also we could not help it when the student doesn't want to participate. So in that concern, we let our students make their own decision whether to write their group member who is not participating, or whether to write it or not. So it's their choice, it's their points. I make them made their own decision, and I make sure that that decision will be only known between me and the students, or let's say the group leader, but not by the specific student. I'm going to observe also. Also observing whether that let's say student is not really helping the group. Now, last but not the least, another thing that I also used to use during the demonstration, this is actually an idea that I gathered way back when I was still in elementary school with my elementary teachers. Well, I think this idea, I just remembered about the past, how my teacher usually does it, how do they usually teach, because of course it's been a while since having online classes. So it's a lot of changes. Now, this thing is very new for my student. Why? I guess how did I understand or how did I come up with the idea that this is their first time? Because they were shocked on what to do with this thing. They see that there is something hidden in this one, probably words or pictures or task, and they constantly ask, "Mom, what are you going to do with that? Teacher, what are you going to do with that paper? Is there something behind it? What's behind it?" And of course, that questions the mind of the student and make it more interesting for them. So they will all focus on that thing. So I'm going to open it as an example. For example, this one. You can be artistic as you want, but as for me, I only use limited let's say limited resources and yeah, limited materials because I don't have enough, let's say, financial support during that time, and Laureta is very far from my place, so I have to spend most of my money on transportation. So instead, I still make it this way. So here it is. So for example, this one. So as you can see, these are rambled words, and this is a used manila paper. But yes, this is a rambled word. So the student doesn't have any idea on what is this and what does it mean. So some usually already have the idea on what this one is. But ahead of time, I give my students, let's say the day before this activity, I gave my students a text that they need to read or to they need to read rather, sorry. So they have this text that they need to read, and also I told them that that text would be related to the next or to the next activity in the next meeting. So this one, for example, they already talked or they already read the article about COVID-19, so therefore they will have an idea on what word this is. So in that way, they could use this board and write it to complete this word or to arrange the word letters into a word. So that's their clue. And sometimes I'll also give them statements that could reflect to this one. Now, after this, what do I do after this one? After letting the students fix the rambled words or rambled letters, I ask them to make a sentence. And that way, oops, in that way, my students could also, let's say, participate. They could also participate in a way of, let's remove this one already. So they could also participate in a way that they could construct their own sentence. Remember that it is very important also in learning English to construct a sentence. In that way, the student will know on how to use that specific word, when to use it, and how to use it. So hitting two birds with one stone. Now, aside from those things, I also use technology. We already have technology around us. So, if you have technology, how you're going to use that specific technology in order to make your class interesting? You can use your, let's say, laptop and create some activities. For example, another thing that my student look forward every time we have classes is that before we start the lesson, I make them guess the topic using four picks one word. So that's a game. We already knew that we're used to that game. And there's even an app used to play with that game. So I use that idea and let's say use it in my lesson. For example, I will present a phone, a laptop, at the same time an iPhone and an earpods. So I would let the student know what do you think is our topic for today. There are a few letters regarding this word or this pictures, and that is our topic. So I would provide them this, for example, W letter. So it starts with W. So I will write it on the board, not this way, okay? I will write it on the board, and I want them to fill in the other letters. So they would think of what is this for pics? What is this word? So when that student answered it correctly, of course you should give a point, because most of the students now see that points are as important as their grades. So that's what I have observed from my students. Now, there are a lot of things that we could use during our demonstration. There's a lot of idea that we could actually use. But remember to look back. As teachers, we need to look back from the past. Look back on how your teachers usually teach. That's the key, because that's how I come up with some of my ideas from the other teachers. Remember that you're not only making this on your own. You're not a teacher on your own. There are other teachers before you. So use their knowledge in order for you to be interesting for your student, in order for you to make your subject interesting, and well, let's say, to make it remarkable for your student so that they would not forget the topic. And that means that you are a great teacher, because they remembered the topic, they remembered how they do it, and how they were able to come up with that idea. So that's how important activity is. Look back to your teachers. Look back on how they teach. What do they usually do in order for you to know and to have an activity? Now, in an actual face-to-face classes, a lot of things change. Most of the students really doesn't care anymore with writing. They could take a picture and that's it. That's all there is. They're going to learn through phones. They will not let's say write anymore. So you will need an activity that would be remarkable for your students. So that's it for today. Thank you very much, teachers. See you again next time, and I hope you've learned a lot from our today's topic. And if you have any questions and queries and etc., don't forget to comment down below our comment section. I would do my best to give or provide videos regarding to your questions. Thank you very much, and see you again next time. Do not forget to click the subscribe button and the bell button. See you, teachers. Goodbye.